Good evening, day walkers and night stalkers. It's me, your twisted Southern Horror Queen, coming to you live from southeastern Louisiana underneath a full moon, I think. I know it's been freaking raining all day. I can't see the moon. There's my girl, Susie Jones, chiming in from Pensacola. And there's my boy, Freddie Roseman. Glad to see you two guys in the house today. We'll be seeing Susie live and in person this weekend at Pensacola. Looking forward to that. Hoping that the weather will hold out. Hope you're well too, Freddie. I see that Friday and Saturday look beautiful. Sunday may be a little bit on the iffy side. So we'll just see what happens with that. But I think it's going to be a hell of a con. Freaking awesome. Looking forward to seeing all of my friends there in Pensacola, especially Susie and Mike Jones. All right, yeah, we're definitely going to have to go have some margaritas at some point in time while we're in town, so reserve an evening for us. Okay, so got to give some shout outs to the sponsors first up tonight because I am so excited. I've been trying to get a vape company to sign on as a sponsor for a very long time. Lo and behold, I found out one of my good friends from Picayune owns a vape shop, Big Time Vapes, at 711 Memorial Boulevard in Picayune, Mississippi. No doubt. Hooked me up with this awesome mod, and she's got plenty more. Different brands, different colors, different sizes, you name it, she's got it. And the juice she made for me. This is a custom blend that she made for me. It is a strawberry custard. It is to die for. And I'll also have to add that I've been struggling with lowering my nic levels, and thanks to Belinda at Big Time Vapes, I am now in the single digits. Can you guys believe that? I haven't killed anybody, haven't had any problems, and it's all thanks to her. So I am ecstatic with that. Check her out at Big Time Vapes on Facebook. You'll see a link for her on the timeline underneath the creepy crate unveil that I did this weekend. That was crazy. They had some freaking killer stuff in that box. Go back, catch the video. There was a book on Belle Gunnis, which we've talked about that twisted bitch on the show several times. One of the wildest and one of the first female serial killers. She was knocking them off left and right. That tram had a serious plan. I'm not going to tell you about it. Go back and catch the video. And another of my favorites that was in the box, I could do a two for right now because I've got my Lizzie Borden wine glass. Of course, they sent a pair of those in the Creepy Crate this month for February. And in my Lizzie Borden wine glass is, of course, Naked Wine. Y'all already knew that. I don't even need to say no. There's no moonshine in this wine glass. Naked Wines. That's some pretty awesome stuff right there. Also, two other sponsors I need to give a huge shout out to, and that is my girl Sandy Thibodeau with HempWorks CBD oil. If you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, you got to get in touch with my girl Sandy Thibodeau here on Facebook. You can also go to my website and click on the big purple hemp leaf. Y'all know what that is. Don't play like you don't. And send her an email if you got any kind of questions. Will it help me with this, that, or the other? She's got the answers for you. And she's got some pretty good deals. Always got the empty bottle guarantee. But I guarantee you, you won't empty that bottle without seeing a whole lot of improvement in your health and whatever your issues may be, whether it be pain, migraines, heartburn, toothaches, you name it. It helps. And also to my guys up in E-Town, Kentucky with Night Risers Con. Always there in October. Meet some fantastic guests there. I love the silent auction. They have always got the best gifts and things that you can pick up at these silent auctions. Definitely, if you've got some horror fans in your life or fans of rock and roll, you can get some really cool stuff at those auctions. There's my girl Belinda right there from Big Time Vapes. We were just talking about you. I was bragging about this killer juice you made me from our brand new mod. And you've got me down in the single digits with my nick. There's David Childers, too. That's my boy from Mississippi Paranormal Research Institute. That is a mouthful, and I have not had nearly enough Naked Wines to get that out without stuttering through it. Recap Ray Hanagu. I'm not sure who that is, but Vampire DJ, dude, you are right up my alley. I'm loving some of you. I'm going to have to check you out. Hi, Jamie. Glad to see you. And there's my boy, Gavin. I've been missing you. I'm so glad to see you chiming in tonight. He's been sharing the video. He's so awesome. And Belinda has also indulged in the naked wines as well. She says they are freaking awesome. So there you go. Two big kudos to Naked Wines right here on the show tonight. Of course, you know, I'm always singing Naked Wines praises. And my scroll bar is not working with me. Surprise, surprise. There's always something that's not working with me up here. But we kind of know what's going on with that. There's my boy, John Bearing in the house. Beth Milburn, that is the wife and the boss of Eddie Milburn from Crazy Thing Art. She's the one that keeps him in line and, of course, watches over him while he is creating some fantastic, killer freaking art. Sissy Vance also in the house. Good to see you tonight, sweetheart. Belinda said yes, told you we could get you down. I'm telling you guys, if you think you can't quit smoking, I'm one of those. I smoke 2.5 packs a day for longer than I'm willing to admit because there's listeners out there that are older than younger than my smoking habit. So we're just not going to go there tonight. But yeah, I did the patches. That's a joke. I did Wellbutrin. Not happening. Channix wrote a great book filled with Channix-inspired nightmares. So yeah, those things did not work. I had absolutely given up. Vaping is the only thing that worked for me. Picked it up, never lit another cigarette. So go see Belinda. There is hope for you if you're trying to quit smoking, and if you're trying to quit eating so much. If you're trying to lose a little bit of weight, she can actually help you out with that as well. So don't just think that vaping is for smokers. There are a lot of things that it can help you with, right, my girl? All right, so starting off the show, new year, new tradition. We're doing a couple of film reviews, kind of, sort of. There was a new film that came out last week, but obviously I didn't do the show last week because of my dog, Oink, has transitioned to the other side. So I didn't feel like I could do the show without bawling my eyes out, so I didn't do it. But last week on February 13th, just in time for Valentine's Day, Happy Death Day to You came out. Now, it's not full of demons or snarling monsters, but it does have a shit ton of blood and guts from what I see. The storyline actually looks pretty cool. It's about this chick that gets murdered, and she has to keep reliving her death over and over again in order to find her killer. Kicker is, it's not always the same death, and there's some pretty brutal and macabre scenarios lined up for this poor little chick. Kind of reminds me of, oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the movie. Final Destination. Some of those kind of death scenes. Also, celebrating its 39th anniversary this month, John Carpenter's The Fog. That was the bomb back in the day. It didn't take a whole lot of CSI or special effects. It was really terrifying. So if you haven't seen it, make sure that you check it out. But make sure you see the original, because there is a remake, and you know I'm not real keen on remakes because they typically suck. But here's a rundown on the movie. So all this weird shit starts going on when this little bitty town in California is setting up to commemorate its, again, not enough naked wines yet, its 100-year anniversary. So shit starts kind of moving around on its own, and weird stuff's washing up on the beach. And then this local preacher stumbles on this dark secret about the town's founding fathers. And in the meanwhile, there's this local DJ, of course, it's Jamie Lee Curtis, because it was a horror flick, and it was back in the day when she was like in everything that was a horror flick. But anyway, she's seems to be experiencing the brunt of all this madness that's going on. And then this freaky fog starts rolling in, and this shit really hits the fan. But I'm not going to give all that away. You got to check out the flick when you get a chance. I promise you, it's a couple of hours that you'll spend, well spent. So, Ricky, good to see you. Hey there, you need to watch Soaked in Bleach? Really? Soaked in bleach. Okay, I'll Google it and see what that is. Freddie said the fog was amazing. You were just a little bitty dude when that came out, Freddie. He was probably still in pull-ups or something, sitting there watching your watching your horror flick, but that's okay. I have a son that did the exact same thing, and he turned out just fine considering he's my son. He's normal. I have no idea what happened to him. So anyway, we're going to kick the show off tonight with a haunted joint across the pond. You know, I love talking about all those haunted places and legends and stuff like that across the pond. They've got some crazy shit going on over there. So this joint has got child ghosts. It's got bleeding nuns. That's right. It's got phantom horses. It's called Whaley Manor, and it's said to be Britain's most haunted house. Now, somewhere in the darkest corners of this ancient house, folks have heard children whispering. And the nun, yeah, there's this nun that just kind of creeps up in the shadows, and the cool thing about it is her hands are dripping with blood. Don't know exactly what happened with that, but I'd love to know the backstory. But they're not alone there, of course. There's a whole bunch of other crazy little ghosties hanging around, going up and down the stairs and down the halls and all over the place from room to room, staring out of windows at you. And also, you may just hear the sound of a phantom horse galloping away from the manor in the middle of the night. I'm going to tell you about that, though. But I want to tell you a little bit about the history of Whaley Manor. It's actually the oldest building in Portsmouth, England, and most of the current structure dates back to the 16th century, but the bones of the manor go way, way further back. Records show that the first owner of this property was King Edward the Confessor. That was in the year 1042, y'all. They had houses and stuff back then. Is that crazy? It wasn't just little teepees and mud brick houses and caves and yeah. Anyway, after the Battle of the Hastings, that little manor fell into the hands of King William the Conqueror until the year 1084. Now, the house, of course, has been altered and renovated many, many times over the centuries. However, within it are still a lot of the same original materials, some dating back to medieval times and some even dating back to the Roman era. That's crazy right there, y'all. But the property eventually went from hand to hand until it fell in the hands of the Portsmouth City Council. And then it was sold to this private organization, which was going to develop it into a hotel. But something happened and the deal fell through, so the property reverted back to the council, who then put it up for auction. Well, with all of this crazy history behind it, there's no surprise that Whaley Manor is haunted as hell, right? It's got one hell of a reputation, and it has drawn in paranormal investigators from all around the globe for different ghost hunts and investigations. And it was actually even featured on one of Britain's shows called Most Haunted in 2006. So we may want to Google that and watch that as well. So let's talk a little bit about the ghosts and the hauntings that go down there. First off, there's a ghost that they call the Lady in the Violet Dress. Now, back in the day when Mr. Thomas Parr lived there at Whaley, he wakes up one night to see the apparition standing at the foot of his bed. But the cool thing with this was, it was actually his cousin that had died in 1917. He recognized her because she was dressed in her favorite full-length violet-colored dress. And she spoke to him in a very friendly manner, very matter-of-fact, and she was telling him about all of her recent experiences while she'd been dead, and about all the other dead family members that she'd been hanging around with, wherever it was she had been hanging around. And then in the middle of her conversation, she stops, and she says, quote, unquote, according to his journal, "Well, Tommy, my dear, I must leave you now. We are waiting to receive Aunt M." So guess what happens in the morning when Mr. Parr wakes up? Yep, there's a knock at the door, and he gets a telegram, and in that telegram, he gets the news that his Aunt M had died during the night. Shocker, right? Not so much. Also, while Mr. Parr owned the house, one of his elderly relatives was staying in what they called the Blue Room. And this chick was very paranoid. She was always very careful to make sure that she locked the door at night, because for some reason she thought that a burglar would break in the middle of the night and steal whatever. Apparently she had something up there she didn't want somebody else to get their hands on. But she'd be flustered every single morning because when she woke up, the door was always unlocked, always standing wide open. Never had any idea what had happened during the night, but apparently her locking the door never did any good in Weimering Manor. Then, in 1958, Mr. Leonard Metcalf, who was an occupant there at the house, said that occasionally he would see a choir of nuns crossing the manor's hall at midnight. They were always chanting, and they were always singing to some unexplainable music. Nowhere on the property would there be music playing, no reason for there to be music playing, but along with those nuns always came the sound of that eerie little song. Of course, his family never believed his story. Maybe they thought he was on LSD or something, but what they didn't know, and also what Mr. Metcalf didn't know, is that nuns from the Sisterhood of St. Mary the Virgin often visited the house way back in the mid-1800s. Then there's this room that they call the paneled room, and it has the reputation of being the most dreaded of all the rooms there at the manor. So the paneled room was a bedroom on the southeast corner of the manor, and Metcalf was using it as his bedroom. So he's in there one day, and he's at the wash basin. Then all of a sudden, as he's got his hands up washing his face off, he feels a icy cold hand on his shoulder. Well, of course, he stood up and spun around to see who in the hell was touching him. And of course, once he spun around, there was no one there. There were also former records of other inhabitants of the house that said that they felt some oppressive air in that room that seemed to be warning them to leave. And when the building was actually serving as a youth hostel, the warden and his wife often experienced this overwhelming and unexplainable sense of fear in that room. Now, besides the lady in violet, we have that ghostly nun that we were talking about. Sure wish I knew the history behind the bloody hands, but she tends to hang out outside of a small attic bedroom, which is directly above the paneled room. Kind of makes you wonder, huh? Well, the specter of this nun, her hands are always dripping with blood, and she has been seen looking down that narrow staircase that leads from the attic. So kind of wanting to tell you a story there with showing up and looking down that little stairway. Who knows what could have happened to the nun, or what could have happened to whoever pissed the nun off. Then there's this one ghost. It's actually Weimering Manor's most infamous legend, and it's about this dude named Reckless Roddy. So according to the story, sometime in the Middle Ages, this newly married couple goes to the manor. But right after they get settled in, the husband gets called away, and he had to leave his new bride all alone. Well, when Sir Roderick of Porchester, Reckless Roddy, hears about this, he goes to Weimering thinking that he's going to hook up with this lonely chick. But the husband come home unexpectedly, chased Roddy from out of the house, and killed him while he was trying to mount his horse and get away. So now the legend states whenever a newly married couple comes to stay at the manor, they can hear Reckless Roddy's horse galloping down the lane. Is there any truth to it? Well, Leonard Metcalf, claiming no knowledge of the legend, said that shortly after his marriage, following World War II, both he and his new wife were awakened at 2 o'clock in the morning by the sound of a horse galloping away down the lane. Well, now he knows the legend. Now, this dude, Mr. Jones, which was the guy that led the youth hostel, they called him the warden back then, he claimed that he heard a horse outside as well in the middle of the night once him and his wife first moved in. They weren't newly married. Then there's Sir Francis Austen. He is a distinguished British naval officer and brother of novelist Jane Austen. He's buried in the nearby churchyard there at Weimering Parish Church. He was the church warden of St. Peter and St. Paul, so logically he visited Warmering when he was there because there was a vicarage on site. And today he's still hanging out in that same little courtyard where the vicarage used to stand. So there's been a whole lot of modern day ghost hunts there. Of course there has, right? I think if something has been standing since the year 1042, there's a lot of crazy shit going on there, and certainly you can catch an EVP or an orb or something there. So it's actually a very popular destination for a lot of the local ghost investigation groups. And those groups have reported encountering the spirits of children, which are frequently seen and heard on the upper level floors. And besides that, there's this standard drops in temperature, orbs, EVPs, and apparitions. So here's some of their findings from their websites and YouTube postings that I found. Spiral Investigations reported sighting an apparition of a tall male figure and possibly a male and female figure descending the staircase, which is backed up by the voice of a male on EVP. Paranormal Tours has posted a video that shows a monk standing in the window. Hailing Paranormal shot a cool video of this weird light anomaly. Not exactly, I did catch a clip of this. It wasn't exactly an orb, but it was just kind of like this wishy-washy line of light that just kind of shot all over the place. Kind of looked like something from a screensaver on your computer. It's really cool looking. Hampshire Ghost Club said that their investigation concluded that there are at least 18 ghosts at Weimering, including a female child, Sir Francis William Austin, a Scottish Terrier dog, nuns, a monk, and a black cat. They have also seen or heard disembodied voices, poltergeist activity, singing, piano music, and of course there is no piano on site. There are doppelgangers there and the sound of a baby crying, and of course the sounds of children's laughter and running around. If you remember right, doppelgangers are they're entities that mimic you. So you could be standing in one place and in another room there's a ghost that is mimicking you, and the people around you who see you in both places are really confused. Not a whole lot of reports of those, especially not a whole lot more recently, but they used to be pretty common back in the 1700s and 1800s. So that's kind of, I don't know, inspiring that something modern day has actually caught a doppelganger. And one last report from Spooky Locations, who says that we can honestly say that it is one of the most haunted places we have ever been in. Plenty of photos were taken during their investigation that captured some unexplained images, along with plenty of light anomalies. And one of their members was even slapped across the chest. So I would say that was a pretty successful investigation there, right? Okay, so now we're going to move on to a couple of haunted graveyards. We like the haunted boneyards around here, but let me see who's chiming in first, as long as my scroll bar is going to work with me. Freddie said, I was actually 4 years old when it was released. I hate you, Freddie. That's a shame. I was legal in drinking, at least. David said he still wears pull-ups. That is so Jamie's problem and not mine. Ricky said, soaked and bleached raised more questions and answers about the death of Kurt Cobain. Oh, okay. I was kind of wondering what that was, but yeah, I definitely would be interested in seeing that because I loved Kurt Cobain. What a tragedy. Gavin says, Nuns was haunting place before the movie came out. Yeah, definitely. Obviously, because if they were hanging out there in the 1800s, they probably have been hanging out there in spirit ever since. Zach, good to see you. Hello, who has any cigarettes? Oh, you're funny, Zach. We don't do cigarettes here. Maybe the twisty ones, but not the ones with tar and nicotine. Gavin said the last listing price for the house was £600,000. That's about $350,000 American. Oh, y'all cough it up. You know somebody watching the show's got $350K to go drop on Weimering Manor. Maybe we can all like pool our money together and go buy it. We'll do it like a timeshare and have our own little ghost investigations there every other month or whatever. I think that's a freaking good idea. We're going to have to put something together like that. Glenn says, hey, sweetie. Hey, Glenn, I'm glad to see you. Steve and Bev Martin are in the house. There's my folks. Glad to see y'all. Ronnie and Lori Owens are chiming in from Katy, Texas. Cody Hollers is also in the house. You know, I never see your counterparts, so he's just way late tuning into the Twisted Southern Horror Queen show. Glenn Harrison, there's my boy from Hardcore Paranormal. If you are serious about the paranormal, unexplained, UFOs, and all the creepy critters that are known to haunt the woods and bodies of water and houses and graveyards or whatever, check out Hardcore Paranormal. They have some very serious and professional discussions, so you don't have to put up with any bullshit. If you have experiences of your own that you would like to post and have intelligent discussions with other intelligent people who are well-versed in the paranormal, that is the place to go. Love you, Glenn. Glad to see you in the house tonight. Love most haunted. Yes, Stephen Beth said. Let's see who else. Ronnie and Lori, hey lady, how's our favorite Cajuns? You guys are still in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you so much. Wade Quaves, the Moonshine Man, is in the house. Hope you're acting right. He must be out on probation. Only from the wife. He's a good boy most of the time. Ronnie and Lori said, I have a real doppelganger. I'm an identical twin. Oh, I bet you raised and wreaked havoc in your youth. Sarah Jones, glad to see you. Cody says, better late than never. That's right. Mary Bell, good evening. Good evening to you, sweetheart. We're glad to see you joining in. Okay. Wait, let me get situated for the next segment with my creepy crate Lizzie Borden axe-wielding wine glass. Is that just perfect? I love Creepy Crate. You guys have got to check that out. Go to authorlyngibson.com. Click on the Creepy Crate logo. Check out the past crates. You can watch the video of my live unveiling for February's crate, which was freaking awesome. And then when you decide that you're going to subscribe, use the code TWISTED and you get $5 off your first subscription. That's freaking awesome. And Naked Wines is freaking awesome too. Man, I'm just slinging the sponsors out tonight. Might as well vape too, and talk a little bit more about big time vapes. That is an awesome little rig right there. I am thoroughly enjoying it. I won't cloud you guys up because y'all will think something's going on in the background. And actually, the kids have been behaving here lately, so I'm not going to instigate anything. Okay, so the boneyards, right? We are going to talk a little bit about the Victorian Brookwood Necropolis in Sydney. It's mainly known as where the grave of the notorious Davenport brothers is found. These dudes were very famous spiritualists back in the day. Also, you will find the grave of Harry Houdini here at the Necropolis. So Brookwood Cemetery, officially named the Necropolis, is the largest multicultural boneyard in the Southern Hemisphere. It's close to Lidcombe Station in Sydney, Australia, and it's also thought to be the home of one of the lost or hidden gates of hell. There are supposedly 13 of those all over the face of the planet. We've talked about a couple of them here on the show. Maybe we need to do a show on just where are the gates of hell. We all know Delphi. That one's been talked about for freaking ever. Gavin said, I will have a bad head this Friday coming. Gavin, I don't understand. Maybe there's a typo there, but you know how my brain works, Gavin. There's so many bad things, naughty things running through my head right now. Robert Forrester, glad to see you in the house. And hey, Troy, good to see you joining in tonight. So also in the Brookwood Necropolis Cemetery is what they call the Wishing Bench. And it's said to be a very special location there. And if you go and you sit and pray, most of your prayers will be heard in heaven and answered immediately. There's also an old legend that says that sometime between midnight and 3 a.m. that an angel appears and sits there at that bench. Now, they say that that happens to ward off all of the evil spirits that are said to be coming up from that hidden or lost gate of hell that is there in the necropolis. So there are approximately 1 million people that are buried here in this cemetery. And some of the older sections of Brookwood are very overgrown with just a whole bunch of different kind of plants. A lot of things that are specific to this area you cannot find anymore. And of course, there's now a whole lot of big trees or groves there where there used to be graves. Well, they're actually still there. They're just under things. So it's also well known to be kind of like a Eden, a Garden of Eden, because of all these beautiful flowers and trees and things that have grown up there throughout the years, that just volunteer. They come back year after year, and there's no one that's tending to it. Cassandra Leonard, glad to see you in the house. She says, sorry I'm late, but I'm all ears now. Oh, I love you too, beautiful lady. So, of course, with 1 million bodies buried in the ground there's a whole lot of ghost photos, EVPs, and actual documenting of what many call the most real encounters of actual paranormal activity in the world that occur here on a daily basis. Many say that these ghosts are more restless here in this down-under haunted city of the dead than they are in any other cemetery documented. You know, I did a whole lot of research on this this cemetery, and there are a whole lot of mentions of different things. One in specific was the Fraser Vault. Unfortunately, I could not find a whole lot about it, and where what I did find kind of left me hanging. So if any of you guys have heard this legend, I'm going to tell you briefly what I read about it. They say the Fraser Vault was built by this dude that was just, he had like all the money. He was the third wealthiest person in the country at that time. And the coffins were all made of black onyx. It's just beautiful inside. And he built it to where his family could rest there in peace and never, ever be bothered again. As a matter of fact, those black onyx coffins were designed to never, ever be opened. Well, back in the early 2000s, a great-granddaughter, descendant of this family, decided that she wanted all of the bodies exhumed, she wanted the coffins opened up, and she wanted all of the bodies cremated. And of course, there was a big uprising about this. The coffins had to be disassembled by a professional, and each of the pieces, parts were labeled and numbered in case they could, you know, put it back together, because they weren't intended to ever be opened. And at the end of this article that I found, I couldn't find anything else, it said, but what they found when they opened the vault amazed everyone. I have no freaking idea what they found. It was very frustrating. I spent about an hour looking in any which way that I could think to Google it, looking through cemetery records, whatever the case may be. I could not find what was discovered once that vault was open. So if any of you guys know that story, that legend, whatever the case may be, I would love to know what the hell was inside that vault. What did they discover? So chime in and let me know so I can stop pulling my freaking hair out about it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about another very interesting cemetery. It is the Roman Catholic El Campo Santo Cemetery, which was established in 1849. It is still around and still somewhat maintained there on San Diego Avenue. So if you're anywhere in that neck of the woods, go check it out if you haven't already. Now, one of the graves there is of Yankee Jim Robinson. We talked about him. That was a bad sumbitch back in the day. And he actually haunts the house that's across the street from that, because that was where he was hanged before he was buried. If you remember that. I don't remember the name of the house, but the house is haunted as hell. I'll have to dig back into that as well. The Whaley House, it's in the next line if I would have just looked at that. But the Whaley House is like way haunted because the dude that bought that lot knew he'd get a good price on it, because that is where all of the hangings went down. And who in the hell in their right mind would want to build a freaking house on that lot? He did. And he had all the ghosties to deal with after that. Folks tried to tell him. He didn't listen. Okay, so this place is actually 2 blocks away from old San Diego's founding dignitaries. There are 477 bodies that are buried there, but not all of them are within the walls of the cemetery itself. So in 1889, a horse-drawn streetcar line was built through part of this cemetery, which later became San Diego Avenue. And in 1942, it was finally paved over, leaving as many as 18 graves underneath the street and adjacent sidewalk. You can look down on the sidewalk today outside the walls and even into the street, but, you know, watch for cars when you're in the middle of the street. You can look down and see these brass markers that are embedded into the concrete and the pavement of the street and the sidewalks, marking these known graves that they knowingly paved over. So a lot of times when people leave their cars parked in front of the cemetery and on top of these graves, they have trouble starting them until they are actually put in neutral and pushed off the grave, and eventually the engines will turn over and they can drive off. There's been tons and tons of reports of car alarms that go off there for no apparent reason. And then the buildings that surround the cemetery, which are probably on top of somebody's grave, they have some problems there, their own, typically electrical problems, and some of them frequently report these unidentifiable mists that just kind of waft their way through the building, through the walls, and go on to the next. A lot of people that visit the cemetery report that they feel a real icy chill when they walk through some particular spots there. And some of these people describe this chill as a freezing and unknown presence. Now, in the evenings, what looks like a Hispanic or Native American can be seen floating just above the ground. He's a misty, glowing figure that can sometimes be seen drifting along the sidewalk as well, just outside the cemetery walls. Figures that are seen here are often mistaken for park employees that dress up in period costume. And even though these ghostly figures look like they're somebody just like you and I, when someone approaches them, they of course vanish without a trace. There's a specific woman in a white Victorian costume or dress that appears and then disappears right there along the south wall. She's seen there pretty frequently and has been photographed quite a few times. Some figures that glide through here are only partially visible, so it's not unusual to hear people report that they saw only like the upper torso of a man or a woman, or a pair of legs walking through the cemetery without an upper torso. I don't know exactly what the deal is with that, but that's got to be kind of eerie. But the most widely seen apparitions in El Campo Cemetery are Indian Hispanic men in 19th century clothing. There's also a woman that's dressed in period clothes, and a man that is said to just hover above the ground. And those folks that fool around with or disrespect those graves have been known to be scratched there in that cemetery. Now, there's one resident there at Campo Santo who has a little bit more cause to be pissed off than most of the others. And this dude's name was Antonio Gara. He was the chieftain of the Capuanos tribe back in the 19th century. That's right. That's right about the time when the shit was hitting the fan between the natives and the United States. So the tribe was in the middle of a civil disagreement with San Diego because they'd started levying taxes against them, while at the same time they were denying them the right to vote. So they start taxing the natives to homestead and to stay on and farm on and hunt on the land that's been in their families for generations. And in the meanwhile, while they're paying these taxes, they had no right to vote, or very few rights to do anything else. So Chief Gara decided that he had about enough of that bullshit, and he kicks off this violent uprising in 1851. Well, that didn't exactly pan out the way that he thought it would, and the execution of Antonio Gara added insult to injury. They forced this dude to stand up in front of a firing squad next to his grave so that his body would just fall in the hole when they were done with him. Gar was also asked to beg forgiveness from the onlookers. Well, after a few minutes, he thought about it and he found his final words. Gar says, "Gentlemen, I ask your pardon for all my offenses and expect yours in return." What Chief Garl was eloquently telling the onlookers is that they should be asking him for his forgiveness for the treatment of him and his people. Naturally, they didn't. So the last thing Gar heard was the crack of a gun before death overtakes him, right? Well, this is prime material for a haunting, and the visitors of Campo Santo today report that they hear the cries of Gar's warriors and their gunshots in the distance, sometimes at night. Now, Chief Gar himself is occasionally visible standing on the nearby rooftops of those surrounding homes or lurking around in the cemetery itself. But it's said that he'll duck out of sight real quick while he's in the cemetery, and that's when you're up close to him. If you see him at a distance, he just stands there defiantly, at least till you get close enough to him. He also seems to enjoy exploring all those homes and businesses that surround the cemetery, and a lot of those guys are reporting frequent mysterious problems with their electronics and their lights. EM disturbances and EVP phenomena are all too familiar around Campo Santo, and the area is a favorite spot, of course, of ghost hunters that are looking to ply their trade. It's kind of like a surefire deal. We're going to be a ghost hunter group tonight. There's one place we can go where you know you're going to get something. That's right. That's where they go. So there actually is one other well-known ghost that hangs out at the cemetery. Notice I said at, not in. This is a hooker from the early 1800s. Excuse me. Let me get PC here. A prostitute. A working girl. So this chick was refused burial inside the cemetery, so the story goes. So this tramp gets so pissed off that with her dying breath, she cursed the whole town. And even today, in death, she is still denied entrance to the cemetery because folks see her prowling around outside the main gate. Now, even though she doesn't really allow people to get very close to her, she does appear as a woman wearing a low-cut dress and a long skirt and a bandana. She walks up and down the fence line and simply just walks away if she's approached. There's a wreath that's hung for her on the gates that's said to be kind of her spiritual magnet. It was hung there by the cemetery owners, and it's kind of come to symbolize her to the public. And just like her, the wreath hangs outside that gate, never ever to go inside. Gavin said, "My birthday is Thursday, so I'm going to have a few drinks Thursday night." Oh, I got you a bad headache. Okay, Gavin will be hungover Friday night, y'all. Do not message him early in the morning. Make sure that you wait till at least Friday afternoon before you tell him happy late birthday, but I will get in touch with you Thursday before that because I have got to tell you happy birthday, my friend. Okay, so as we know with the wreath, sometimes ghosts tend to attach themselves to physical objects, something that they may have owned in the past or may have wanted in the past or had some kind of affection for. Well, this hooker apparently knows that that wreath is there for her, and she is very attached to it. And sometimes when we touch things that these spirits are attached to, it tends to summon them. And sometimes when we touch these things that these spirits are attached to and they're summoned, they're not happy about it. So if you decide to go visit this cemetery, you may just want to take a picture of the wreath. You might not want to touch it because apparently she's not one that you would want to piss off. And with the consideration that there are sidewalks and a street and cars park and drive and spill oil and exhaust all over a lot of these graves, there are a lot of pissed off ghosts in this cemetery because their resting place has been disturbed and it's not ever going to find peace again. So just keep that in mind if you visit this cemetery. Also keep in mind with the prostitute that she is powerful enough to become visible to the naked eye. She is still pissed off. So if you do decide to summon her, make sure that you keep your distance, because I have a feeling that if she is the one that you get close enough to, she may have something to do with some of those folks getting scratched. She's still very resentful to the living, because obviously the living can walk in and out of that cemetery whenever the hell they feel like it. She, however, is still outside the cemetery walls. This cemetery is so active that back in the 1990s, all these local business owners and the people who have houses around them who are sick and tired of their lights going off and on, there's all kind of crazy stuff going on in their house every freaking day. Well, they gang up together, they pull their money together, and they hire some professionals to come in there. They hired a ghost hunting crew along with an exorcist. So this group of professionals go out into the cemetery. They perform this elaborate ritual, which was, of course, intended to drive these restless spirits away. And actually, it worked to an extent for a little while, because the reports of paranormal activity, it did end for a few months, but then again, slowly it began to build up again. And nowadays it seems that the spirit's power over El Campo Cemetery is so strong that even this contracted effort couldn't drive them away. It's still just as haunted, if not more so, than it ever was. So definitely, if you are a ghost hunter and you are out there in that neck of the woods and you need to get some good evidence for an investigation, head out there one afternoon. Just stay the hell away from that wreath on the gate, right? Let's see who else is chiming in. Recap is just posting shit left and right. I'm going to have to check out what all that is about. Glenn Colbert said, hey, beautiful. Hey, Glenn, I'm glad to see you joining in tonight. So the next story, of course, is from a friend of mine, Susie Jones, a local to Pensacola. She's also a regular to the show, and she is also the caretaker of Christine, the movie car. So yeah, Susie's got her hands full a lot. But Susie gave me this cool gift, and I wish I could reach it. It's across the room. She does embroidery, and she made me this cool black bag with a strap on it that's got Christine with flames coming out of her on the bag and in the bag, which is freaking awesome. I don't want to use it because I don't want it to get dirty or messed up, so I keep it on display up here in the girl cave. But in that bag, she gave me a book of the most haunted places in Pensacola. Now, Pensacola is a place that I've run back and forth to many, many times in my youth, and still occasionally when I need to just get away. But I never realized that there was so much haunted history there. And I've read several of the stories, and this one in particular stuck out, and I absolutely loved it. So I wanted to share it with you, or at least give you the rundown on it. There is a place over there, it's a little house, that is rumored to be one of the most haunted houses in Pensacola. It's called the Dorr House, not D-O-O-R, but D-O-R-R. And it was built by Clara Barclay Dorn back in 1871. Now, this chick was the widow of a very wealthy lumber tycoon. And the old man dies, of course, so with the old man dead and in the ground, there wasn't a whole lot left for Clara to do but spend his money. So Clara has this two-story Greek revival home, style home built to her specifications because she needed somewhere to live that said, hey, y'all, I'm rich and I'm single. So she has the house built. Well, everybody in town already knows who this chick is, not just because of her old man having been so successful, but her father-in-law, Ebenezer Dorr, had been the first sheriff of Escambia County, and that was back when Florida, of course, became a state back in 1821. He was also rumored to have ridden with Paul Revere during the Revolutionary War. So, over the years, the Dorr House has been used for many city and county functions like benefits and charity events, and I could imagine some political stuff was thrown in there as well. And Clara also had 5 kids as well, so the house was always pretty busy. But nowadays, she pretty much has it to herself, with the exception of a few local events and tours and maybe a couple of other ghosties that hang out there with her. Now, Clara absolutely loved this house, and apparently she was just as OCD as I am about everything in its place. And there's this one tour guide in particular that can attest to that. So this chick's given a tour of the home, and she takes her group into the kitchen, and she takes a few of the old antique kitchen utensils down from their proper places and starts explaining to her tour group what they were and how they were used and all this kind of stuff. Well, instead of putting them back where they belong, she just leaves them laying on the counter and takes the group to see the rest of the house. Well, before she gets ready to leave, it dawns on her, I hadn't put that stuff back in the kitchen. So she goes down to the kitchen to put everything away, but Clara had already beat her to it, and everything was back where it had belonged. And considering that this tour guide and her group were the only people inside the house at the time, you know, good and damn well it was Clara that did that. So this other tour guide there, she also found out that besides being OCD, Clara's got another little pet peeve. When she was leading her group through the house, she started describing Clara to them, and she made the mistake of referring to Clara as a plump woman. And the second that came out of her mouth, somebody shoved her from behind. But of course, there was no one behind her because the entire tour group was standing in front of her. So do not refer to Clara as being plump if you visit the Dorn house. Apparently she's a little bit on the miff side. So Clara doesn't really have a problem with making her presence known. She's been spotted darting around in the corridors, and she's been photographed a whole bunch of times in kind of a not quite solid but not quite misty form in all the rooms of the house and out on the grounds. And a lot of people have actually spotted her in the formal sitting room. I actually learned a little something here. Check this out. This room was designed especially for the women folk back in the day. It's got these floor to ceiling mirrors in it, so you know when suitors or visitors came to call, the women could run in the sitting room and make last minute adjustments to their garments, or you know, rouge up their cheeks or whatever they needed to do. But also in this room are what is called fainting chairs. And these chairs were designed to catch women who had been stuck in a tight-ass corset for way too long and were near the point of fainting. I can so identify with that. I need a fainting chair here in the house every once in a while. So Clara is also spotted there in that sitting room in one of those chairs, but not always because she was to the point of fainting. Sometimes she sat there and rested in between chores or while she was waiting for the kids to fall asleep. Now, sometimes she'll also make her presence in the sitting room known in a very different way. If a chick walks in there on tour or a tour guide or whatever, and that chick's got on a pair of short shorts or a short skirt, it's not uncommon for them to feel something tugging at their clothes. So apparently, Sarah or Clara does not like for women's legs to be exposed. Now, there's another very active room in the house, which was called the Sickroom. It's basically the sewing room, which they converted back in the 1880s. That's when yellow fever was ravaging the area. So tourists and tour guides and paranormal investigators have all claimed to have heard the sounds of people crying, coughing, whatever the case may be, coming from the inside of this room. It could either be the spirit of somebody who was afflicted by the plague or survivors mourning someone that passed because of the plague. And it's more naked ones. It's decided to be winter again, so the heater's running, and now I've got scratchy throat. So one of the other spirits that hang out there is what they call the translucent lady. Now, some people think that it could be Clara. However, the image that is seen is usually that of a younger woman, somewhere in her mid-30s. Now, sometimes she's seen dancing around on one of the upper level rooms or standing out on the balcony looking across the way at a church that still sits there. She shows up mostly at night and in full form, but it seems like she's more likely prompted when a piece of furniture has been moved from its original position, or when the garden is not quite up to par. This leads me to believe that she could be either a younger version of Clara, or maybe one of Clara's daughters that also inherited her OCD traits. Now, Clara isn't the only family member that's stuck around there. She also is accompanied by one of her children that died at a very young age. And this child is very mischievous. He's known for taking small knickknacks from off of shelves or out of bookcases and hiding them. And the tour guides will pull their hair out trying to find this piece or knickknack or whatever the case may be. And eventually they'll give up and just think, hell, one of these people on one of these tours stole it. Well, the second they give up, the little object always turns back up. And of course, it's in some weird place that it should never have been, but they eventually will put it back where it belongs. Either them or Clara will. Now, there's a whole lot of different occurrences that go down there, besides a little mischievous kid that's taking things and hiding them in other places. A lot of times people will photograph orbs or vortexes. Vortexes aren't as common as orbs, but they are pretty phenomenal. If you ever get a chance to document one, kudos to you. A lot of investigators and visitors alike have captured EVPs both inside the house and on the grounds near the garden. And back in the early 80s, they had this security alarm installed, but before it could actually be hooked up to power or activated, it had this weird habit of just going off all the time. There are also cold spots there, and a lot of times people will claim they smell roses, which of course were Clara's personal favorite. All right, so I am going to call it a wrap. Hopefully, I will be seeing some of you guys over at Pensacola this weekend. Jackie Burns, glad to see you. Lynn said, hey, Lynn, better late than never. It's all good. Also, if you would like to get your creepy on before next Tuesday, make sure to go to authorlyngibson.com. You can check out my books, my blogs, which I do want to mention my blog is among the top 100 worldwide horror blogs. I'm somewhere in the 60s, high 60s, so that's always cool. And then slide all the way over to the side of the tabs. Go to The Edge Radio US. Make sure you download those free apps for your Android phone and carry some badass rock and roll along with you. We will be in Tupelo very soon, Cassandra. Looking forward to seeing you as well. Freddie, thank you again for thanking me. I appreciate that. April said, oh my God, I'm so late. Was prepping my house for a storm coming. Oh, God love you, April. I've heard about that 15 feet of snow that's supposed to be coming. I hope you're not in that path. Lord have mercy. Also, please check out all my sponsors. You got Hempworks CBD oil, which cures damn near everything. Go to Big Time Vapes. Check those guys out. They ship. So make sure if there's something you need, a new mod, coils, juice, they do ship. Ask her. She's got some serious blends there, and people just smell them and seem to get addicted. So if they move off, if they're not local and they've smelled one of our customers' blends somewhere else, they'll get in touch with her, and that is where they buy from there on out. Also, check out my friends at Night Risers. And, of course, the Creepy Crate. You can check out the Creepy Crate right there on the homepage for authorlyngibson.com. See what has been in some of the past crates. Make sure you scroll back down on the Southern Horror Queens Facebook page and check out the quick little live unveiling I did of February's Creepy Crate. Did that Saturday, so it shouldn't be too far down the timeline. Crazy cool stuff in there. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you for all of your support. And as always, y'all keep it creepy, and hopefully I will see you guys back here next Tuesday night at 7 Central and 8 Eastern. Oh, we're doing this again. That's always cool. Y'all are sitting there laughing, going, ha ha, her computer's not working again. No, it's not, because it's an asshole. I'll just sit here and have a little more naked wines, and eventually it'll decide it wants to do something. Maybe. Not so much. That's just awesome. New computer next week, I assure you. Wow. We may be here for a while, y'all. Yeah, go ahead, make a trip to the fridge, grab you a beer or some naked wines or whatever the case may be, because, yeah, it's just going to sit here and let me chill with you guys. That's freaking killer. Here we go. All right, y'all. See you next week on a different computer, I assure you.